It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
All right, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcasted weekly from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand. My name's Lewis and I'm the host of the show. And this week's episode 23 with a man I've known many years, Mr. Andy Pickering. Quite an interesting list of achievements, as you'll see in the blurb, either on iTunes or on the site or on Facebook, or wherever you found this episode. With such compelling tags, I just entered into the system as Freemasons, Scientology, Unarius, and Internet Party. Just four of the interesting topics we covered, three of which Andy's had direct involvement with. One of the other he hasn't. We just kind of ponder it because it's odd. Okay. Yeah, Anzac Day yesterday, so assuming most of my listeners are either Australian or Kiwi, we all know what that is. I didn't do the dawn service. It occurred to me, this is terrible, I've never done the dawn service. It's not because of any kind of statement on my part or whatever. I grew up in a family that did kind of observe a lot of things and so on and so forth, but maybe because of where the grandfather was born time-wise, kind of dodged both wars. Don't know a lot about the family history before that. Had a dad's side, came out from England when he was 13, being the dad. Then don't really know much about that side at all. Just no kind of connection to war in terms of family-wise. I guess a lot of people go to observe that. Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about that. What I did feel a little uneasy about is everything under the sun being attached to it for that day. It all felt a little bit in places like, kind of, hey, we can market this under the Lest We Forget banner. It also made me realise that, for better or for worse, I love New Zealand and so on, and got a sense of history and stuff, but I don't know I'm the kind of patriotic that patriotism's often branded as here. I should have a closer connection to sport. It felt like if I was really connected to sport, watching the news on Anzac Day last night, that I'd feel more of a New Zealander. Sigh. It's a funny day. Public holidays are a funny day. Public holidays are a funny day if you've got to the age of 40 and you don't have a family and you haven't had a partner for a while, and you kind of wake up and go, this is kind of an oddly spacious day. You can't really call the friends because they've got partners and families. So I went into work for a bit. But then I did go fishing afterwards and enjoyed that. To people, I just realised I skipped through a couple of these intros to other people's podcasts yesterday, and I thought to myself, do people listen to this bit? Is it just something you feel like I should put on? I should try and keep them as brief as possible. Though I did take some notes. About this rant. I may have lost them. Great episode with Brendan the week before, by the way, and with Tourette's, Dom, the week before that. Neither of them shared it. I'm hoping they will. Haven't heard from Dom. Hoping that my unbridled, not unbridled attachment to Marxism hasn't set us afoul. No, I can't find the notes on Andy's episode, so. This is going really well, I feel. If you're new, this bit's normally better than this, and the interviews are even better than that. Oh, I'll finish with this. Andy has the best idea so far when I asked him what perhaps should replace our current political system. It's very techno-futurist. Anyway, like the podcast, like it on Twitter if you would, Verbal Highs. It's at Verbal Highs for Twitter, at Verbal Highs Podcast. On Facebook, I need the numbers in this modern world. Verbalhighs.com if you want to get in touch with me, verbalhighs@gmail. You can subscribe through the verbalhighs.com website to the iTunes feed, or you can go directly to iTunes and search out Verbal Highs. All right, enjoy the show. Episode 23. Woo!
Verbal high straight down from up above.
So you've come early. So my notes are all in an array, but that's right. We'll we'll freestyle this. But actually, you've brought notes, so at least some planning's been done.
Has anyone else brought notes? No.
No one's brought notes,
Really?
but I kind of like that. You know?
Interesting. Okay.
I'm sure people have thought about stuff beforehand. I think Russell Brown said he had mapped out in his head what he planned to do. So my guest today, on this fine post-Easter weekend, Tuesday in Auckland, is the founder and editor of both Remix and Pilot magazines, former editor of Herald, I guess, gossip column. You can correct me if I'm wrong there. Spy, former music promoter and DJ, essential credentials on many of my guest lists. One-time radio host. I don't mean once, but once hosted radio shows. Currently works for Backchat Media, who appear to be a kind of social media and online branding and marketing experts. As general manager, was brand manager for the Internet Party, and also a Freemason, I believe.
Oh yeah, look. Hi,
Lewis.
Lewis.
Welcome, Andy Pickering.
Thank you, Lewis. Yes, that's true. Actually, I was a Freemason.
What do you mean you were?
Well, the funny thing is, in fact, they say that once you're a Freemason, in many respects, you are always a Freemason. So I could, in theory, go to any Masonic lodge around the world and be welcomed in as a member of the Fraternal Brotherhood, and I have a certificate at home, and it's quite a flash certificate, from the Grand Lodge of England, and so I could go, as I say, to any lodge with my regalia, which I have, which is it's called an apron, which is what you wear around your waist. It's a builder's apron, and a kind of
because it came from stonemasonry, didn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, it seems that it's sort of an obscure, although it used to be quite secretive as well, it seems an obscure organisation to be aligned with. How did that come about?
Yeah, I suppose, I've always been quite interested in, things that are interesting, shall we say, and, things like secret societies, politics, whatever, all those kind of organisations. And I just thought, what is there about Freemason? What are the Freemasonry secrets?
You just joined to go in and have a poke around.
So the way it worked is I was doing Pilot magazine at the time, and a guy who was a photographer approached me because he wanted to do some work for the magazine. And so I met him for a coffee, and I noticed that he was wearing a Masonic ring. And so he said to him, bro, can I ask you about that ring? What's the story there? And he said, well, I'm a Freemason. And I said, that's interesting. Tell me about it. And he said, I can't really tell you about it because we're a secret society and I've made many pledges and blah, blah, blah. And so that kind of fascinated me a bit, I guess. And, met him a few more times, and he invited me. How do you break through
the? How do you break through the? Because if it's a secret society, it's like a great paradox. It's like, how do you break through to the other side?
Sure. So I believe the way it works is, although it's a secret society, anyone who fits the criteria, which I think is basically you're a decent and upstanding individual, blah, blah, blah.
Have a penis.
Yes, although they also have female Freemason lodges. There's not many, but they exist. You can go along and then you just get, I think, nominated by a member and approved, and then you start going through the various rituals to become a Freemason.
Is that where we hit a wall in terms of us talking about it?
Well, I actually wrote a piece for the Herald about it. When I was only an active Freemason for maybe a year to 2 years, but because here's the situation, right? Because Freemasonry is very much a dying brotherhood around the world, and the reason for that is, younger people today aren't really interested in it, and it is actually quite a big commitment. So if you've got a family, blah blah blah, and that's one of the main reasons I stopped. But
what's the commitment? What are you doing with all this time? What's happening in those rooms?
Well, so the commitment is, you have a monthly lodge meeting.
Yeah.
But if you become an officer or you start going up the ranks, there's quite a near overwhelming amount of ritual which you have to learn. So you get this little ritual book, and these are ancient rituals from, a few
what
centuries
sort of things ago. What are they?
Well, it's like,
are they physical activities?
The easiest way to describe it is like, imagine, a kind of Shakespearean type drama.
Yeah.
And you physically act these out, and you've got all these rituals to say, these actions to complete, and you need to memorize it all. And the higher up you go, the more there is to memorize. And because I was one of the young guys, they want to promote the young guys and move them through the cheers. And so I was basically, going to be shoulder tapped to be the master of the lodge, which is
that's amazing.
Which is quite good fun, because it's actually, it's fun acting out the rituals to a certain extent when you're new to it, and you're like, oh shit, this is quite good fun. But ultimately, I was like, do I really want to invest all this time? Probably not.
How long did you say? About 2 years.
About 2 years.
And so, was your headspace through this? This is fucking wacky, I'll just keep going? Or was it like, were you actually kind of getting brainwashed? Or were you just,
I don't think it's brainwashing. I mean, at its heart, really, Freemasonry is just a brotherhood, a fraternity, in the same way that, say, a Rotary Club.
Yes.
Or,
so unlike Scientology, where you're progressively paying larger and larger amounts of money to find out stuff about what thetan level you are and so on. And
exactly right. It's nothing like that. You don't have to pay money. You don't get brainwashed. And I just watched the 2 Scientology docos
which would be the
week.
Theroux and the Going Clear?
Correct.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
Do you know, I listened to a podcast with a woman who's broken out. She used to be on a show, something I never watched, something like King of Queens. Anyway, she's left. She's getting a whole lot of drama from the church. But she said John Travolta's at a level, I don't know if it mentions, I haven't seen those films for a while. He's at a level where he can kill someone and the church will turn a blind eye, and then he basically, theoretically, if he killed someone, he leaves the room and the people assigned to Travolta clean it up and never speak of it again.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably, that might be an exaggeration, but it would be true, and it would be true for Tom Cruise as well. And
well, if it's true, how can it be an exaggeration?
It's true in the extent that, John Travolta and Tom Cruise are so valuable to the public image of Scientology. But, I was talking about this with someone on the weekend, and I think it seems like Tom Cruise hasn't really spoken publicly about Scientology for a few years now. So maybe the reason for that is he's perhaps less enamoured than he was. But obviously he can never speak ill of Scientology because they've been auditing the fuck out of him forever. So
that's the bit that fascinates. That to me, that you really hit on the crutch of how they've got them is that is ultimate blackmail, right?
Mm-hmm. And because Tom Cruise is not stupid, presumably, and neither is Travolta. So these guys, they must know that David, what's his name? David Miscavige. They must know what kind of power and control and just a nasty piece of work that he is. They would have witnessed a lot of it, you know, so...
No, that's right, and funny enough, same thing, I was talking to someone about it yesterday, weirdly enough, it came up, because they'd just seen the film, and that's what I said to them, Andy, is like, it seems like L. Ron Hubbard was the sort of slightly, very nutty he's written the most fiction of anyone in history that's been published.
Very prolific
Right.
science fiction.
So anyway, yeah, right. So this guy, used to do the penny science fiction magazines and so on. There's the guy with the sort of mad ideas and so on. But it seems that whether he was truly sort of evil like Miscavige, I think Miscavige has taken this thing and gone, right, I can now exercise all my kind of wildest, nastiest, whatever. Yeah, I mean, another thing I took away from it is I don't know how people can be so stupid, but then I was like, that's a little unfair of me. I don't know if it's stupidity or people just looking for something, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's not so much stupidity. And look, people are stupid, but everyone has their own motivations, and everyone is, as humans, we are motivated to search for meaning, and we all find meaning in different places, whether it's Freemasonry, religion, drugs and alcohol, dance music, or whatever the flavour of the, being a social media influencer. That's
right. How we see ourselves in our employment, exactly, and so on. Hey, we'll move to you and your history in just a sec, but last thing there is they've actually just bought... There's a really iconic building in Grafton, which they've just purchased. So it sounds to me like it'd be interesting. It sounds like they're really going to try and push Scientology to New Zealand a bit more shortly, right?
Yeah, well, they're, much like the Catholic Church, and I guess to a lesser extent, but they're quite very powerful property owners. Yeah,
McDonald's, the Catholic Church, Scientology.
strange bedfellows, but yeah.
So, hey, when I first met you, I would have been... I started kind of coming up to active probably mainly as a... probably over-the-top prize winner, to be honest. I don't think you were ever working in the office or anything. And then I kind of slowly slid into shows. I started going to dance parties around then. I was a teenage meddler. And here you were, DJ 8 at the time. I think you briefly... you were involved in running Biosphere, right? The smart bar... all ages rave cave.
Yes, indeed. Talk
a little bit about all of that, man. Like, Wellington, for me, that's 96, 97. I can't speak to when you discovered all of that, but we're pre-internet. We're kind of getting everything straight away, scenes and fads and so on. Like, how did you discover all of that, man?
Yeah, well, I guess for me, what year do you think you first started even walking into active? What year would that have been?
Actually, you know what? I've got all those dates I just mentioned are wrong.
I would say they're
wrong. They're wrong.
Wind it back.
I'm normally really good with dates. So about 93, 94. Yeah. 93, I would have been 7th form and coming up and winning more prizes than one man should. And then I think I was doing shows by 94, and definitely 93, 94. That would be Leon's early parties and stuff. So around then.
Yeah, so I started hanging out.
Thanks for that.
That's all right. I mean, I went to university. I think I'm rubbish at dates as well, but I think my first year of university was probably 1990. Yeah. And I think I started going up to active in my second year. Yeah. And it's that same old story. You walk into BFM or active or whatever, and you get your mind a little bit further opened to all things alternative music and the culture that surrounds that.
Kind of kindred spirits you didn't know were kindred.
Exactly right. Yeah. And so at the time, this is pre-dance music. Really, dance music was just kind of forming, and so
in New Zealand,
correct. Yeah. And so as a radio host, if you like, doing shows on active before I became a DJ, it was playing the mix of, metal, the early grunge, the early hip hop, and, combinations of all those things. And I mean, active was, so many good people there. One of my favourite memories of active is, do you remember that guy Adam who was...
I think you've asked me this before.
Yeah.
And I just remember he was super eccentric. I remember he had a job. He was a lovely guy, but I remember he had a job that he was always up there in a huge long trench coat from memory, but he had some job where he'd just be cutting stuff up with scissors all day, and I don't mean I'm naive and he was cutting up trips. I mean, bigger pieces of cardboard.
So Adam was this dude who literally sat on the couch at Active from around 9 a.m. to 4:30 every day in his trench coat and his glasses, not saying a lot. My understanding is that he was there as a kind of...
Work for the dole or something?
Something like... It was more like a diversion, so he didn't get in trouble or go to prison or something. He was kind of siphoned off to Active too. And he did I don't know if he he did much real work of real use to the station, but he always had quite a lot of pot on him, and in particular,
maybe he was cutting up baskets. I don't know.
In particular, he had caps of cannabis oil, and so he'd sort of be dealing that on the sly from the couch at Active, and people would partake and go off into the cemetery next door for a session before you did your show.
Mm.
Yes.
So that's what Adam's function was there.
Correct.
And then from doing shows, did you, like me, find yourself at something like one of Leon Baldock's parties, or?
Yeah, I mean, I went to those parties. I was, becoming a DJ around that and parallel to that. Yeah. And I guess probably like you, my first experience of trying to mix vinyl on a Technics 1200 turntable was under the tutelage of Moo.
Yeah.
And, so, I was just like a skinny white guy, and I can remember my hands shaking even trying to put a turntable on the platter. And Moo would sort of patiently say, this is how you cue it up, and this is how you pull the record back to where you want to start, and this is how you mix, and then maybe it took a long time to try and get the mechanics of beat mixing down, but you get there eventually, and a lot of us probably over-practiced, live on air, maybe when we shouldn't have.
I used to do Death Till Dawns. That would be great. It'd be like
too.
1 a.m. till 7 a.m.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the last of my group I'd drag along would be falling asleep, and it'd be like 5 in the morning. Halcyon days. I used to love tuning into those shows years later and just hearing the cacophony of experimentation of youth, Yeah. And with the Moo thing, I'll just cap that off. I didn't really thought about that till you said that. He actually was a bit of a mentor as well, because he used to also, considering, I was a grommet, essentially to use skateboarding parlance, forward me quite good records at Troubadour and stuff that normally would have gone to the cool kids.
That's right. So, and we're talking about Moo from Fat Freddy's Drop. Obviously.
Chris,
But so, and again, like Troubadour Records, and all those, early record stores, especially in Auckland, I guess, for, the dance music, and Soul Mine with Cayenne and Kilburnie. But Death Till Dawn's Active.
But
good
so
times.
how did that move to? Because I think before we sort of turn the mics on, you mentioned something or other. Oh, the Rip It Up job we'll get to was your first real job. So it sounds like you've been sort of an entrepreneur sort of type in one way or another since then. Well, what were you doing in Wellington and so on? Well,
so I was obviously at university, and through Active very quickly developed a taste for dance music, and then all the early house, or all the early techno, and hip hop as well, really, and started DJing in places like Cuba and what was it, ESC before it was ESC?
It was ESC before it was... it was Edward Street Club first.
Yeah, it was something before that anyway.
Yeah. It's had about 9 names since I've known it. Yeah.
Yes, and then, one of the first parties or live events that we did it with Simon Swain.
Yeah.
And so it was called Psychic Droid
at
Bats Theatre. So this would be, 92, 93.
Yeah.
And it was 5 different live techno/electronic acts and 5 DJs, and I think that was the first kind of
live PA
techno party, and it kind of stemmed on from there. Then I started living I got a flat. One of my first flats was above the notorious Cadence Cafe.
Yes.
So Cadence Cafe was one of the first smart bars or smart cafes. If you don't know what that is, smart drinks went through.
What were they, Andy? I suspect they were just spirulina with a bit of extra vitamin C, some milk and a banana.
With some pretty good marketing, I guess. But nootropics, or the idea was that smart drugs that would improve your mental performance and energy, and it's probably a crock of shit. But and
I think they were really expensive a drink, $15 a drink or something.
But weirdly, the guys
20 years ago,
the guys that ran Cadence.
He was an old hippie from memory.
Yeah, worse than that. This is going to sound like I do. See, this is, again, the cult thing is coming back. And this time, so these guys
they were trippy.
They were believers in a UFO
like
cult.
Scientology style.
Yes.
They thought, yeah.
So, you can look it up. It's called Unarius.
Okay.
Unarius. It's still going around the world. And it was kind of like, it is like a really hippie, trippy, lovey-dovey idea that there's these ancient alien race, Unarius, were going to come in. Now, I need to make it clear that I was not a believer. They just happened to run the cafe, and they had an empty space upstairs.
They did, yeah.
Where I ended up living for a while, and we turned that space into, like an
Was it Trojan
all-ages-
House? What was that building called?
Yeah, Trojan House.
Oh, how does my memory do this? Yeah.
So we turned that into an all-ages nightclub called Biosphere, which was, again, all those DJs like Coda and Jaden and Martin Kwok and
Conspiracy,
me, and playing, techno, trance, etc., etc.
Yeah. And what happened with it?
So what happened with it? Well, I think we ran it for 3 months, but, we were just, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids with no idea what we were doing. We just wanted to throw techno parties, and even though it wasn't licensed or anything, so it was not too many major headaches. I think in Wellington, there's only so many kids that are going to go to that on a weekly basis,
Yeah. And we did.
We did for a while. So I think it ran for, 3-4 months, something like that.
What do you think now? I mean, like, I've asked a few other people about this in different contexts. Like, it feels to me like health and safety's gone so mad these days that someone would have sniffed that and shut it down within a week now. Or am I imagining that? It feels like there was a lot less rules around.
Absolutely. There was more of that, it's the DIY ethos where you just went and did it. And it's also because...
But I don't think that's a tribute in any way to our particular nous as a generation. I think it's just that shit's harder to do now.
Well, I think it's also because that culture was brand new, so the energy and the spirit kind of motivate you to go out and do it.
Yeah.
Whereas...
Though, playing devil's advocate, because I've thought about this,
yes,
the scale of those events that Leon was putting on at those waterfront sheds,
yes,
I remember once being outside having a cigarette and watching two cop car just sort of slow down, kind of peer around and drive off. Like, I just think now... The authorities would be all over that.
Yeah, they probably would. But also, you have to understand that the events weren't licensed, which makes it easier, I suppose, to get away with doing something like that. But I think you're probably right. It'd be very hard just to rock up and do a 3,000 person
How many
rave.
portaloos have you got per 100 person? Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly.
So the move to Auckland was made. You've kind of never looked back because you're born and bred Wellington. Where'd you grow up in Wellington? You're a Scots College guy, Wellington College guy.
Wellington College. Yeah. Born in Wilton, then moved to Karori, went to Karori Normal School. Yeah. And then Wellington College.
And then why a move to Auckland? Because the next thing you did from memory was you and Tim founded Remix magazine, right? Was that before or after the move? I'm trying to remember.
Quite a bit after. So the way I moved to Auckland was I'd finished 2 years of my degree, still had a year to go, but I'd fallen kind of headlong into DJing and promoting and wanting to do that. And one day I saw a job application. I don't know where I saw it, but it was for a job at Rip It Up magazine in Auckland, and the job was they were looking for someone who could be the receptionist / dance music writer. And now that's quite a specific skill set, and
it's quite a specific. Yeah, it is that duo.
I don't know if there's many people that would have wanted to do that, but so I applied for that because one thing I could sort of do was writing.
You got 146 applications, 4 from Invercargill.
And so I remember Murray Kamek came down to, or I wouldn't imagine he came down to interview me, but he happened to be in Wellington and said, "Oh, I know you've applied. Can we meet?" So we met at Midnight Espresso on Cuba Street, and I ended up getting the job. So moved to Auckland, and this is when Rip It Up were, funnily enough, in a kind of faceless corporate office block on Victoria Street.
Still a free rag, right? And getting picked up by lots of people.
Yes, and I got a flat up the other end of Victoria Street, which was just typical Scody 90s flat. With a bunch
Again, gone owing to changes in what goes on.
So that was my first 9 to 5 gig, and I sat on the reception desk at Rip It Up. I must have been a pretty shit receptionist.
Why do you say that?
Just because, again, it's just this young kid from Wellington with a backwards baseball cap, a messy goatee.
You can tell you're an organised guy because you've got through everything you've got through. I don't think you're as useless as you probably thought you were.
And this would have been, probably just a year or two before the advent of things like email.
That was going to be one of my next questions.
And Google and Photoshop. Yeah. So the magazine was still being put together old school style, and we had a phone with a switchboard and
a fax.
And
I thought of that because you told me that you were doing like a scene. Correct me if I'm wrong. You were doing a scene rundown for the major cities. What's happening in Christchurch? What's happening in Wellington?
Exactly.
So was that just get on the landline and talk to? Oh no, get on the mobile. Come on, there were mobiles around. It wasn't that long ago.
I think it would have been. Was it? I guess maybe. Yeah. No, there would have been mobiles. Yeah. But the calls would have been really expensive, so you'd make them from the office line. But I was literally just had. One of the guys I was talking to was Jeff Wright, who at the time was in Christchurch running Echo Records. So he and I think Obi-Wan, Matt.
We haven't talked about that. Just quickly, that just to be specific. Yeah, you eventually, after being sort of playing all that different style of music on the radio, became essentially a drum and bass DJ for a period. So this explains the connection to Jeff, right?
Yeah, correct. So, and, I'd be talking to guys like Clinton Smiley would do the Wellington stuff, and Andy from Discotheque, Andy and Brad. But, I guess around then, while I was at Rip It Up, that's when I transitioned heavily into drum and bass.
What happened? Did you see a DJ or go to a party? Or
I think it was just because the music was so fresh and full of energy and attitude, and I was just like, this is.
And it draws a bit from hip hop. It draws a bit from rave music. It draws a bit from even roots and stuff for sure.
Exactly. And so then, while I was because
you became a house DJ.
Well, later,
which I like. I like. Yeah.
Oh, look, in my time, I've been house DJ, trance DJ, hip hop DJ. You name it.
It's a sign of someone who's got an ear for good music wherever it's falling. So anyway, so you met Jeff. Sounded like we were going somewhere with that.
Well, I was communicating with Jeff, but I guess more specifically I met Dave Roper, D-Rave, because the Auckland dance music community, no matter what genre you were playing, was very much centred around, High Street and BPM Records or Quaff Records. And so you knew everyone, all the other DJs and promoters, just from going to those shops and hanging out. And, High Street then, as I'm sure you know, was
much more sort of bustling and alive with a kind of creative scene.
Exactly. Yeah. And, you feel stupid telling it to, kids today and going, oh, High Street's fucking whack, bro. But anyway.
Good dumplings.
Yeah. So, the way that Subtronics formed was actually, I was actually also hanging around with Jungle Dean. Yeah.
Dean Benfell.
I
wonder where he is.
Yeah. Probably nowhere good.
This is such an not in-house, in something podcast.
That's right.
Who's Dean Benfell?
But
it's Jungle Dean, bro.
Long story short, Jungle Dean and I started Subtronics.
I've heard he's in Queensland.
Yep. And then D-Rave came on board really quickly. Yep. And we started promoting, international drum and bass acts.
Now, again, unless I'm horribly wrong, for people who aren't aware of the history, there wasn't any group in New Zealand regularly bringing in international DJs then. I think you guys were the first, right?
Yeah, probably the first to bring them in on.
I don't mean bring them in general, I mean regularly.
Yes, correct, exactly right. So the first ones were Ed Rush, DJ Trace, Groove Rider, Doc Scott, and then Goldie, PFM, LTJ Bookham, etc., etc.
Yeah. And I went to a few of those in Wellington, the Wellington versions. I think I must have sold them on. There was a huge one in a shed with that guy Ian and so on, the big Groove Rider party.
Yes.
Ed Rush was oddly at like a little rock and roll bar on like a Wednesday night.
Is that Hole on the Wall?
Yeah, it was great fun.
Yes.
Then off to the breakfast show in the morning. After about 2-3 hours sleep, raving. So again, in hindsight, do you feel like how the hell did I pull that off? Because we so hadn't done it before, or was it just the spirit of the? It's a big thing, man. Like again, pre all this technology as well, like logistics, booking flights, accommodation, picking people up, promotion, how much do we charge for tickets,
Well, it's just like anything, you just, if you're really passionate about it, which we were, you just go and do it, and you can go a long way on passion and youthful energy. And as long as X amount of people come along and pay their $20, we didn't get rich, but, we didn't lose any money either.
Yeah.
So, you got to say that is good times.
And you introduced, more importantly, a whole lot of, new culture into Auckland and around New Zealand, I guess. What do you think these days about people who do courses? And there seems to be there's a huge amount of courses now that didn't exist back then, like how to DJ, how to put on an event, how to do this, how to do that. You never did any of those things, right? So.
No, I guess those courses didn't exist.
Well, yeah, but actually, that was a very good question, right? I was meaning, like you said, just be passionate and get in there and do it. Are you, I feel like with your kind of career and stuff, that seems to be almost a mantra, right?
Well, I think that, and that's probably one of the secrets to life is, if you're clever or lucky enough to find a way to earn an income doing something that you're passionate about, that's probably the smart thing to do. And I don't know if I've managed that all the way through, but I suppose I have as well.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that's one of the ways you get the most out of life.
Totally. So from the Subtronics thing, you somehow segue or move into. Things weren't as segmented then, but I guess there still was a kind of drum and bass scene and a house scene. I'm guessing you moved there, and then the Remix magazine thing. Did you know Tim Finn at Wellington College?
No,
this is Tim Finn, not of the Finn Brothers fame. For some listening, this is Tim Finn, currently still editor of Remix.
Yeah, so Tim went to Wellington College, but I think he's like maybe 2 years younger than me. So he's 2 years behind.
He'd be my year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't know him at Wellington College, but we knew of each other loosely, and then we ended up in Auckland around the same time, and we ended up flatting together with guys like Sam Momini.
Yeah.
So we did a few parties together, more like the kind of the breakbeat sound.
Yeah.
And then I moved back to Wellington for a year because I hadn't finished my degree, and I thought be the smart thing to do would be to finish it.
That's very disciplined of you, Andrew.
Yeah. So I went back and finished my degree.
Did you finish it? You did?
Yeah.
What was it in?
A BA, of course.
Yeah.
Majoring in English and sociology.
Great, cool.
Which
sociology's handy for everything you've done.
Oh, my partner jokes that it's lesbian studies. I don't know if that
was outside of
a smart thing.
That was outside of university. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm finishing my degree, and then Tim calls me up one day, and he's like, "Andy, you've got to come back to Auckland. We're going to start a magazine." So I was like, "Yeah, sweet, bro." Finished my degree. I'm on the way. So
that's all he said, and you were like,
"Yeah, well, because I was ready to move back, and." So
you didn't say a magazine. What kind of magazine? Where did you get this idea from?
Well, no,
have you found a cheap paper stock?
No. Obviously, it was going to be a dance music magazine,
right.
And he knew that I'd done the dance music media at Rip It Up, etc., etc. So it was quite a good fit.
Yeah.
And did
he have any media or print or writing or anything background? Good on you guys.
No. But so we flatted together on High Street. We started doing Remix. And we had no idea what we were doing in terms of how to make a magazine, except again, you can go a long way on youth and energy and passion.
And that's right. And almost like, I think not knowing the pitfalls is almost a strength, right?
Definitely. And
again, so I've looked at my demographics, my listeners. It's amazing what Google Analytics tells you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to know people's screen resolution? I guess you do if you design something. Anyway, I digress. So I know from looking at the demographics, there'll be a number of people listening who simply weren't around, or more accurately, were too young when the early Remix came out. So describe what it was. Describe the first ones that came out. What did they look like? What was in them?
So, in the first years of Remix magazine, it was essentially a free monthly magazine, but printed on reasonably sexy, glossy paper for the time.
So, whereas early Rip It Ups were newsprint. Correct. And then got a little bit shinier. Yeah, you were on what was at the time typically paid for magazine stock. Yep.
Correct. And so, essentially Tim designed it.
Yeah.
I wrote everything and Tim sold the ads.
Yeah.
And we were DJing and putting on parties at the same time. And this is like 97 really, which is really when the dance music culture took off in a big way.
And then
New Zealand and around the world,
weirdly,
but-
timing wise, middle of that year, I started doing the Brekkie Show on Active, and for sure it was, we were playing a lot of electronic music.
Yes. So that's
Much to the chagrin of the program director at points.
Yeah. And so I guess that's when I would have moved from drum and bass heavily into house music.
Yeah.
And so Tim and I, we did a lot of, we were putting on parties all the time.
At bars or random spaces or bars and clubs?
Bars and clubs, smaller scale house parties, especially at Calibre.
Yeah.
Did a lot of stuff at Calibre.
Yeah.
And, that was quite that was a big scene
Yeah.
in those years for Auckland.
It was like the Kiwi house at the zoo. You had to go in and wait for your eyes to adjust to the dark.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And so, we lived and breathed that kind of dance music culture for a few years. And, Remix slowly evolved or grew up. And then we started doing, free CDs.
Yeah.
So a different DJ would put together a mix CD.
So now the magazine's got a cover price though now, right? Surely you're not doing free magazine, free CD.
Yeah, so that was the transition from being a free magazine to a paid magazine.
Yeah.
And then the CD was introduced then as the hook to get people to buy it.
Do you think that? I think that sounds like a really clever move because you're a music-based magazine and so on. Do you think the CD really sold it?
I think it
was mixes from local DJs and so on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone, Mikey Havoc,
People
Clinton
still have their
Smiley,
favourite ones. I see it come up
Philippa,
on Facebook. Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
And they were good CDs. Put them together. We spent a lot of time on them.
Did you license the tracks?
We licensed them in the sense that we would contact the label owners, just via email. And sometimes people would say no, but most of the time people said yes. And then, we still did it through the APRA thing. So,
and that was back when even in New Zealand, I guess a good tune on a mix CD could see a number of those 12s going out the door of local record shops and stuff as well, right? So it works.
Absolutely,
that producer.
And I think, we were such a tiny little magazine and a tiny little market that, people are like, they're almost flattered if someone in Europe somewhere gets an email from someone in New Zealand going, yeah, bro, love this, can we use it on a mix CD? You know?
And so what year did it go paid roughly? So it started in 97, you started doing a cover price 99-ish?
Yeah, 99-ish.
And what was the response from... Because press was still very big at the time, the press industry. Was there any response from sort of your major publishers and stuff, like, who are you guys or whatever, or did they just let you get on with it?
I think they just let us get on with it.
Upstarts?
Yeah, let us get on with it. There are a few other magazines around then as well. Pavement was doing well. Loop in Wellington. And then various other kind of free street pressy things.
Yeah.
And we all... had quite a bit of crossover, but quite clearly defined niches as well. We're obviously dance music, Pavement were the slightly older, street culture in general.
But it was more general, and so what? So Remix is still going, but from your tenure or your involvement there, how did it evolve? When did you? Because were you still around when it started making the transition more to I don't know what I'd call it now, a fashion magazine? Probably predominantly. I don't know if Tim would say that was the correct definition for me. It has other content. But...
Well, it's just, I guess, as I got older and sort of grew out of, just...
Your rave pants.
9 to 5 rave pants. And...
That's 9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Starting to, I was just starting to get more interested in, I guess, a wider... array of subjects and a slightly more sophisticated visual aesthetic. Yeah. And I, tried to put that into Remix, perhaps a bit too early for that.
Where are we here?
Yeah, so...
where are we here time-wise?
2006, 2007.
Right. So it was still a dance magazine purely up till then?
No. It was still very much fashion shoots and the wider culture. But I wanted to do something that was a bit more ambitious.
Yeah.
And so, somewhat bravely thought, okay, I'm out of here. I'm going to go do a new magazine.
Amicable split, Andy? Is that the right word? You and Tim were all good?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
No,
Okay.
we're still on good terms. Hi, Tim. So I went and did launched Pilot, which at the time was my attempt to do, literally the best magazine in the world. Tried to do a really kind of high-end coffee table style magazine that
The sort of magazines people hold on to rather than throw away. They had them more on their bookshelf.
Exactly. Something that was collectible and had more of a global outlook, really high-end design and, fashion, and some kind of wacky stuff as well. It's one of those things that, it's really good to be in control of something yourself, but the
so here we are. We're this really beautiful aesthetic and so on and so forth, and blah blah blah. But we're slightly subversive because I want it to be that way because it's mine.
Yes, and and the problem is the downside is if you indulge your kind of inner instincts too much, you can. So I end up doing a 32-page black and white feature on. An obscure subject like fashion versus architecture, and
that's not that obscure, is it?
Or in this issue, which I brought along for you,
it's beautiful looking, the fonts and so on. Yeah,
a 32-page art visual narrative on the 2012 conspiracy theory. Just because I thought it was a fun.
Yeah, but then we go. That's what I was looking like. And I go. And someone else was like, what do you call them? A thing a group gets brought in to do market research. So Andy, we went to focus groups and we talked about how many people were into.
So, as you can imagine, the people that enjoyed it and appreciated it were like, oh my god, this is incredible! It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
But that's quite a narrow group of people. It's not the mainstream. And so Pilot only lasted for 6 months. One of the problems was. But
hang on, sorry to cut you off. But I heard that that's a real shame because I'm sure I heard that you spent a year just gestating it. You spent a year planning and thinking about what the first edition would be. Right?
Did I say 6 months or 6 issues?
You said 6 issues, and then you said 6 months
across. It lasted 2 years across 6 issues.
I was going to say, I thought that sounded too short.
And,
good. So 2 years.
And I did spend a year kind of figuring out what it would be, and I guess that was 2007 to 2008. So the problem, of course, is. First issue came out roughly or just around the time of the great financial crisis crash in 2008. Yeah. So not a great time in the years following to be trying to sell magazine ads.
Luxury items like large glossy magazines.
Exactly. Yeah. So, that was the challenge.
Do you think, I always wonder whether, so those financial crises, I always wonder whether that's a bit of a sort of a media myth narrative. So that sort of thing does actually affect, so people, okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you, it seems like a long time ago, but when that happened, it literally everyone's belts tightened across all industries.
Did it happen? Was that sort of the main, consciousness announcement of that having happened, or that when there was actually that crash? Was that around pretty much exactly the time you released?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so that must have been fairly terrifying for you. The other thing at the time is, were people around then before the crash even going, why are you launching a new magazine now? Because, technology was what it was even then. It's not that long ago. Or were they still selling?
I think we're in that sort of early transition where magazines or print media was definitely in the, shall we say, very early stages of decline. But, certainly not to where it is now. But I think at the time, the thinking was, well, there's still space for print media that is not disposable and provides something a little bit extra or a bit special or a niche or whatever it is. And, I'm sure some people would make the case that argument still applies today, but perhaps less so.
Yeah, so I don't know where your head's at. I mean, it seems like such a passion project. I know you won awards for it. It looks and reads incredibly. Where was your head with it all at the end? Was it quite sort of devastating, or was the end like, oh yeah, it's this has reached its natural conclusion.
Yeah, I'm super proud of them. I think they stand up well to any other
Yeah.
magazine in the world. I think they were kick-ass, loved it. But yeah, no, I think it just reached its natural course, and I could see that.
So you didn't have a breakdown at the end or anything?
No, not really.
No, that's good. That's good to hear. Yeah. And then I just also wanted to ask about Pilot. Something else I read this morning is you managed to get it into sort of markets in San Fran and I think New York, Melbourne, Sydney. How does one do that? I'm imagining you pack a bag with a bunch of copies. You go to those cities. You're an independent publisher, and you just go to cool magazine shops and say, "Will you stock this?" Is it that simple? Or do you need record companies? Do you need distributors?
It was only ever in tiny numbers
Right.
in those other countries, and it's more like one or two boutiques here and there. It's not proper. It wasn't proper distribution. Yeah, but if you want to do proper distribution, you go to a distributor and you say, "Here's my product," and they say, "Yep, like it," and then it's just the
You didn't
challenge.
do that. You stayed fiercely indie.
Exactly.
So how do you think, in this environment we're in now, 2017, Remix has survived? I think it's quite a feat that it's still
I think it's
still on the shelves.
I think
Because it's got a body count behind it,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of, if not the only, magazine still standing.
Yeah.
And I think the reason for that really is because, Tim kind of, if you look at Tim, started in the 90s and has gone the whole way through. And he's always very good at advertising.
Yeah.
So he has that kind of network of contacts built in over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And that just transitions across the digital and social media space now as well. So it's Remix is not just the magazine, it's the wider Tim Finn universe.
Yeah, well, I mean, for listeners who don't know, if you look at the success of dance parties from a financial perspective, he'd have to be our largest promoter. I mean, I can only imagine he does very well from his Our House parties. Yeah, he's just sort of he's a package, as you say.
Exactly, yeah. And so he's been promoting parties the whole way through and DJing. So I think they just kind of feed off each other, really.
Yeah. But then what does that matter to the person in New Plymouth when it's sitting in the dairy? People must still be buying Remix around the country.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they are to some extent. I wouldn't imagine that the sales are particularly high, but, success sometimes is, it's a visual... exactly, it's perception,
Perception management. And then, so you don't have a nervous breakdown at the end of Pilot, which is fantastic. Well done. But at the same time, do you take a little breather before deciding what to do next? Or we must be at about 2009, 10 now?
I'm losing track. Around 2010, I think. Yeah, it took a little breather. Had a son around that time as well.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, no, I got a little
What's his
boy.
name?
His name is Asher.
Hey, Asher.
And then, wondering what to do next. And again, it's
decided to become a tabloid gossip monger.
It's just one of those strange turns.
When I saw that you'd got that, I was like, that doesn't really seem like the Andy I know, but fuck, good on him.
So... Well, it's because my partner Lee, I was living with my partner Lee in Parnell, where we live today, and one of her oldest friends was a guy called Ricardo.
Yeah, photographer. No, I'm thinking
it's Ricardo Simic, who still does that spy gossip column to this day, and so I think Ricardo that's kind of his world, and I think the Herald were looking for someone to. So replace Rachel Glusina, or was there someone after? Yeah, I don't know.
Wasn't she after you?
No, she was well before. I think there was a few stand-ins, and then,
Speaking of perception management, anyway.
Yeah, exactly right. Less said, the better. So long story short, Ricardo and I, as a team, got that job. Yeah. I only did it for maybe a year.
Was it fun?
It's fun.
You must get lots of tickets to things.
Absolutely. What's the gig? The gig essentially is to go...
Lots of goodie bags turning up on the doorstep.
Go to events with free champagne, canapes and goodie bags and try and work your phone.
And so when people know you... This is what's so funny. I was just thinking about it now. So when people know you do that job, they must constantly be whispering gossip into your ear at these things.
Yes and no. I mean, I think in the days,
so weird.
And the days that someone, Glucina was doing it.
Yeah. By the way, again, clarification for everyone. I have offshore listeners. Spy. It was what would you call it? A celebrity scoop section of our otherwise quite serious newspaper, the New Zealand Herald. Is that a fair?
Celebrity gossip and news, exactly.
News.
Yeah.
Good photos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
So all I was going to say is, when Glucina was doing it, she was obviously quite notorious for having a really nasty edge.
Yeah, shit stirring.
To her stuff.
Yeah.
Shit stirrer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but because there was quite a lot of, I guess, backlash to that style.
Yeah.
I think the paper recognised that could no longer continue. So when Ricardo and I were doing it, the nasty edge had pretty much gone, and it's really just what is it? It's just news about dickheads, what they're doing on Instagram or where they're.
How many pages is it in the paper? 3, 2?
Yeah, it's like.
Was it a full-time job?
Not really.
I was going to ask if it was. It's like, what do you do with 40 hours?
Yeah, no, it's
doing
not
that
full-time.
Job? So you were just. It sounds like you were just enjoying a kind of slightly fruity part-time gig while your new son was around and spending time.
Got on one,
with
Lewis.
That. Yeah. So you didn't end up with death threats or anything like that.
No.
You were the nice guy. You've got. I didn't want to look at your list. You've got written there Australia 220k. What's that? Is that far too far back?
Yeah, too far back. But I lived in Australia for a while as well. We did Remix in Australia.
You did. That's right. I remember. I went to the launch party at Honky Tonks. So it's an interesting topic for a lot of people, I think. I don't know if you listened to the podcast I did with Mikey, but obviously he was involved with Mr. .com as well.
Yes. So Kim.com, Internet Party. This is how it happened, right? I'm still doing Spy.
Yeah.
Through the process of doing Spy, I went to a couple of events at the then .com mansion. As you do.
Yeah. How was it?
Fantastic, good fun. I mean, that's it was something a bit larger than life and
something kind of other international feeling. Yeah.
Totally, and obviously, Kim is a larger than life character and quite an interesting guy to talk to.
Yeah.
So I met him a few times, and I kind of got the sense that. I think we, funnily enough, for a gossip column, we broke the story that Kim.com was planning a political party.
Yeah.
And so I said to Kim, half seriously, look, Kim, if you're serious about starting a political party, I'd love to help. Yeah. Just because I thought, fuck, what an adventure.
Well, that's what I thought when Mikey told me about his involvement. I'm like, well, yeah, I'd put that as a story, something to have done.
So, so I resigned from Spy. And, started hanging out at the .com mansion. You were
actually hanging out there?
Oh, yeah, we were hanging out there. So I remember, one of the first times I went out
there... What
does
hanging out at the .com mansion involve?
Well,
that you can tell me on...
So one of the first times I went out there to meet with Kim, just the two of us, and discuss what this might look like. We're sitting at a table inside. We're just having some kind of loose chit-chat. And then he says, okay, I'm not going to do his accent, but he says, okay, Andy, let's adjourn to the table outside, if you don't mind. Said, of course, Kim. So we walk out to the table outside, which is by the pool, and then he says to me, okay, Andy, we can speak freely here because this is the only space on the property where I can be confident we're not being listened to by...
So he thought his house was bugged, or was bugged?
He thought so, and I would
make sense.
Exactly. Yeah. So who knows what the real story is. I would imagine NSA, Five Eyes Alliance, etc., would be keeping close tabs on him.
Yeah.
And especially when he's announced that he's going to start a political party.
Yeah.
But so we're sitting at the table and he said, we can speak freely here. And then I think one of the next meetings, which again was at this table, I turned up and there would have been 15 people around the table, and I'm like, shit, what's going on here? And I look around and I see Mikey Tucker sitting there. And we obviously knew each other from Wellington, and we sort of locked eyes and gave each other a nod like, oh shit, here we go.
Yeah, and who were they?
And so it was a mix of people,
It was the cabinet and the planners.
This is very early on.
Yeah.
And so, there were various, let's just describe them as various political consultants / lawyers from around the world, really, who had been in or out of Kim's orbit and had come to advise him.
Wow. And so do you think the press, in terms of just reporting on his life and so on, never mind the court case, are unfair on him? Do you think it's a media storm?
Yes, I think they were, but obviously I think Kim, never really did himself any favours at the same time. But of course the press are always going to.
But I find that funny. You have people like yourself around, people like Mikey, these experts in these fields. But then I was thinking about people tapping him on the shoulder. But then at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, I guess that wasn't your job. You weren't brand manager for Kim.com. You were brand manager for the Internet Party, right?
Exactly right.
You know what I mean? Like,
don't get, obviously, and then following this, people like Vikram Kumar came on, who incredibly smart internet guy, and he directed all of the policy, with a few other people. And look, I know people laugh at the Internet Party today, but
I don't know if people laugh at it. I think
I guess they more laugh at what happened and the
elections
imploded during that election. But when we first got involved, this is pre the whole deal with Mana and what happened there. But the I guess the thought behind it was genuine, and the policies under Vikram were genuine.
I did a test online to see which party my beliefs and so on and my perspective on society was most aligned with, and it came up Internet Mana. Yeah, didn't vote for them, but it came up there.
So look, it was
How long did you do it?
I guess it was roughly a year.
Was there any of the madness talked about, the sort of musicians and so on who've talked about their experience? Were you called in to work at 3 a.m. suddenly, randomly on a Tuesday, or did you manage to keep it quite a set of ground rules?
I think it was, in the early days we would go out and work from the mansion.
Yeah.
And then we had
above Real Groovy,
an office in town above Real Groovy, which everyone just kept kind of, I guess, standard hours.
Yeah.
But it was an election campaign, and so as the election grew nearer, obviously everyone was working very hard.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we separate talking about Kim for a second. The experience of a political campaign. It is something not many people get to experience. What did you take away from it? Did it change your perspective on politics, on politicians, on the system? Did it make all those sort of things?
I think one of the things I learnt is that politicians they're all dodgy.
Polytricks. It's exactly what Mikey said.
I know. I heard Mikey say that, and I agree with him. And I know why Mikey said that. And
things you can't talk about,
not in detail. But and I think it's true around the world, and it's true across the board.
Well, why would you crave that level of sort of power and control? It is, it doesn't surprise me.
And I think most politicians, they do essentially still mean to do good, but the nature
what goes wrong?
The nature of the political process, whether you're having to climb the ranks within your party, do deals, and it's just politics is just it's just one of those games where shit seems to happen.
I think that's really pragmatic, and that's fair of you, Andy. Yeah. So they're not all evil tyrants to begin with. You go in perhaps even really innocently with the desire to change, but the only ones that last are the ones that get fucking ruthless.
Yeah, well, I think you need to be... At some point, you will be faced with a situation where you need to compromise something in order to get where you need to go.
Like I believe any position of great power. For
sure.
I've said it on the podcast before. People really high up that just have to have a body count behind them, metaphorical or literal. And then, so what about in a wider sense politically? Even with sort of Trump and so on recently, I've joked. Turning into a political podcast each week, which I never wanted to be, but just sort of simple question. After that experience, do you think democracy still a working system? And big question in 2017. You know,
that's a good question.
Yeah.
So here's the problem with democracy. If what is the best democracy in the Western world today? So if the Americans or the UK,
I think I might to answer that. You mentioning America in the first breath. I think the capitalist democracy is where democracy's completely fallen over. So America's out. Yeah.
Absolutely, America are out, and the UK, United Kingdom. So what I'm saying is, both America and the United Kingdom hold themselves up as standard bearers for the idea of
the Western
democracy, which the general idea is that everyone around the world thinks it's not a perfect system, but it's the best one we've got.
Yeah.
And yet, if you look at how then can everyone vote essentially against their interests to get, say, the Brexit result or get Trump to become president?
Yeah.
And then
marketing.
It's marketing. It's playing on people's base fears and manipulating them. That's what it is.
So we're not. It's not really a free vote in a free system.
It is in that you've got one vote, but the choice is it's a bit of a limited choice, really.
Yeah.
And it's that cliche. Well, what's the choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump?
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, well, it's not a great choice. And
it
probably isn't really. But the American system, did you see John Oliver's episode last week on the gerrymandering idea?
No, but
You know what gerrymandering is?
I've looked it up, and to be honest, I'm not going to put myself on the spot here. It's some kind of what do you call it? Agitating by private interests? No. It's a vote. No, it's a vote fixing system. I'm putting myself on the spot. What's gerrymandering?
Oh, so gerrymandering. I'll try and.
Now you got to.
Now I've got to figure it out. But essentially, it's like each state, like whoever's controlling that state in America. I'm going to get this slightly wrong, but it's essentially redrawing the voting lines to either exclude or include
red or blue.
So you're manipulating the electoral map to get the voters that you want.
And how do you manipulate the electoral map if you're just a party or whatever?
Well, it's whoever's in control.
So whoever's in control changes the boundaries each election to...
Exactly.
That can't be right. But then the next thing is again, it's a huge question. I mean, what do you change to if it's not democracy? There has to be a system where people get a voice, or maybe democracy just needs cleaning up.
I think the problem is not democracy. The problem is humans.
Yeah.
But people are very flawed. Humans are flawed. Yeah. Human race is flawed.
Yeah.
And
which is why when I had Tourette's on last week, and he said he's very shamelessly into the Marxist system. I'm like, well, even in that collective socialist system, corrupt humans will screw it up for everyone, because someone will always go, actually, I will take more of whatever.
I think the answer really is probably something like a really smart group of people who are hopefully good people invent some kind of artificial intelligence and give it clear barriers so that it can't overstep its boundaries.
But what if it turns against us?
That's why you give it very clear barriers, and that essentially is the challenge. But then you devise a system that is actually inherently, well, let's not say fair, because what's fair, but the system has to have as its goals.
What is this techno-futurism you're presenting me with?
Absolutely.
Can everyone out there hear this? The guy from the Internet Party eventually wanted New Zealand run by a robot. Well, I'm going to send out press releases about this.
All I'm saying is humans haven't done we've done. Look, no. In the broader picture of the history of the last 100 years, of course, humanity has advanced on every level. Lifespans are longer.
It's also
poverty
destroyed.
Is falling.
But
we're destroying the planet and oppressing people. But the general curve is very positive.
Yeah.
But how do we keep it going positive?
Well, I don't know. How do we?
And look at Trump. Is Trump going to be potentially brought down in the next few weeks? No.
Why do you think?
I don't know. Here's the thing about people talk about conspiracy theories and fake news and how that is the natural home of, I guess, the far right, and I think that was true certainly in the lead up to the election in the US last year. But
no, bullshit. What about this? Keep going.
Plenty on the left as well. But
yeah.
There's the whole Trump-Russia conspiracy, whether it's a conspiracy or not, and you see the gradual joining of those dots and the tightening of whatever the ongoing FBI investigations are.
Yeah.
Whether there's so much smoke, it looks like there's fire. Yeah.
What are you saying?
Trump will either go down or not. But
who
he might
go down. But who will take him down?
Well, the congressional investigations that are investigating the ties or supposed ties or collusion between Trump's operatives and, let's say, Russian intelligence operatives, and the hacking of the DNC and providing it to WikiLeaks, blah blah blah, and all the ties between Kushner and all these Trump guys have really weird backstories involving Russia.
Do you think that is unique and limited to Trump? Though I don't mean specifically Russia, but that level of kind of backroom, corruption and deal making and so on. I've got a feeling, speaking to everything we've been talking about, it wouldn't be a unique scenario.
Definitely not. It's the same on both sides.
But it's just that more of us are fervently against Trump.
But I guess it's who is the more blatant or self-serving about it.
Yeah. What do you think is going to happen with North Korea and the US? That's the last bit of politics for now.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
Who the fuck knows?
Yeah.
Is Trump using it as a distraction now that he's kind of flip-flopping on everything he said, and now he's engaging the military?
His Twitter's gone quiet, so it makes me worry that he is getting quite serious, and people have said, "Hey, just stop with the 3 a.m."
I think it's more that he's on the golf course the whole time.
What's funny for me is of all of these, the warfare thing's obviously freaking terrifying, but economy, global politics, the one thing that freaked me out most about Trump getting in was the environmental
me too.
The environmental ramifications. We can't have such a grossly free market guy running things.
Yeah, look, the environment. I mean, oh man.
Would you? Let's cheer this up a bit. Hey, so would you work a campaign again? Kim won't do that again, will he? Is he going to be extradited?
I've no idea.
No idea. So you haven't seen Cad Cooey with him since?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, it was an interesting experience. So from there, I don't know if you take a bit more time off, but you end up with this Backbeat. Have you been with Backbeat Media?
Backchat.
Backchat Media ever since? Know them well. Does general manager mean founder again, or did you finally go, I'm just going to take some of the pressure off myself? And
so a woman called Mel Lee started Backchat, and then brought me on. We're still, I guess, like what you would describe as a boutique social / digital agency.
Boutique, but you got the Melbourne Cup.
Yeah. So we've got some good clients, and we work across New Zealand and Australia. Some quite big clients in Australia, like Melbourne Cup and some of the big, Channel 10 media.
So it's on online presence, promotion, strategy. How for perhaps businesses who perhaps are used to operating in a more traditional publicity medium, get themselves into that world with the skills of people who kind of know it. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's one of the things we do is help maybe say bigger organisations who they don't always have a clear digital roadmap or a social media strategy, or they might have one that's really outdated. And
what are really common things you tell people to do and not to do? This is for anyone with a personal page too.
That's a big question.
Okay, that's fine.
But so if you're applying it on the individual level, be authentic, be consistent, have a niche, own it.
So do you get individuals with enough money behind them that they spend money on how to put themselves out on social media? like socialites or whatever. I don't know.
It's not necessarily that so much as if you flip that, we work with what you describe as social media influencers who already have that large audience and social media clout, I guess, and so then we would help them work with brands that want to engage those influencers.
So so I'm using this lipstick today on my makeup blog, 300,000 followers.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I chuckled to myself that, what was it called? Internet and social media advice and so on. That you actually, for everything you've done, especially in the areas you've done them in, you are quite elusive on the internet. So I think perhaps you might have given yourself some of the best advice possible, is stay out of the public eye.
Yeah, it's like,
or are you just a low-key dude who...
Well...
Because you kind of... It's weird. It's a weird mix. You know a shitload of people, and a lot of those people are out in the public eye, but you're sort of a quite low-key dude as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I used to be really into Twitter for a long time, and I was very active on Twitter. And look, I'm obviously on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. But when you work in social media, and this isn't true for everyone, I'm sure, but it's true for me, I sort of, don't feel the need to be actually... Look, I read and consume a lot of social media, but I don't actively just post as myself.
I wasn't just meaning social media, Andy. I was meaning in general, like when I'm going to just use the line my listeners have heard me use too many times, but my research is Googling and looking pretty much through the first 3 pages. Yeah, and you're quite elusive for the sort of stuff you've done.
Did you watch any of the Coachella live stream?
No, I didn't. It seems it seems weird to me watching a festival from afar. Was it good?
I think it is weird, but at the same time, how cool is it that you can do that?
I didn't know you could do that till now. So it was the whole thing. Could you go between stages with like pressing buttons? Or
so Coachella have 3 different YouTube channels, and so they're effectively live streams of the different stages. So the stream 1 would be
no fee, nothing, just go in and
just go and watch.
And what were your highlights?
So the only 2 that I actually
what do you do? Do you sit there like it's like watching sport? You sit there watching a rave, watching a party with like a beer and a cooler, sitting on the couch with some popcorn.
Exactly, and like one of the hashtags on Twitter.
How old are you now?
Was
how old are you now?
How old?
Yeah, you're 42.
42.
Yeah, there you go. That's how it's all happening.
One of the hashtags was couch chiller, because you're watching it from your couch. Yeah. So I watched Lord last night, and then I watched Kendrick Lamar last night.
How was Kendrick?
Kendrick was unbelievable.
I got the new album the other day. I haven't listened to it properly yet. So what was good about the show? He
was the headliner. So he put a lot of thought into developing a show with a concept and visuals and telling a story. So he had like this kind of kung fu narrative that ran through it, and he just played sometimes literally like a 30-second snippet of a big track, or up to a couple of minutes, but just ran through the big hits with a lot of new material. Incredible.
And Lord, do you get a sense of just how globally famous she is when you see her at something like that? The crowd went mad.
Yeah,
do you think she's as at that level of incredible talent and timelessness as a lot of the hype says about her?
Not sure.
Neither. I think she's very good. But I when I had friends and so on, speaking of people like Prince and so on in the same breath, I'm like, I think I'll let history or the sands of time just decide and let that one play out. Yeah,
it's like, David Bowie famously said about her something like, when I listen to Lord, I hear the future.
Now, did anyone overhear that, or did that come from? Where did that come from?
Who knows where it came from?
That's a great thing. I mean, if he did, that's amazing.
And look, it's a nice thing to say, and I'm sure he genuinely meant it.
And if someone like Bowie's talking about the sound of the future, then what would I know?
And I she's still very young. I genuinely think she is incredibly talented, and she's
so do I.
A gifted songwriter. But how far she'll go, who knows?
I thought I've got about five or so minutes left, and I thought you'd be a good person to ask about. Again, it's a big question. You can go wherever you want with it. but you've got this. Essentially, your career's media. It's magazine publishing. It's journalism. Radio, etc. Party promoting, DJing, yada 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 yada. Now you're in this kind of social media and internet presence advisory sort of capacity. Where do you think social media's headed? Do you is that too broad?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Did you?
I was thinking on my way over, I bet he's going to say, what are the future trends of social media?
Yeah, okay.
No, is it too broad?
What
No.
a hack.
Yeah.
Go on.
I mean, if I had the answers, then, what a smart guy I'd be, and obviously no one knows. But the broad, I guess, trends are, the technology and the platforms are evolving and improving at such a rapid rate that it's almost, it's confounding to try and keep up with.
Yeah, how do you keep up with the back end of it and not just end up reading kind of PR hype?
Well, you just do your best,
Yeah.
But as one tiny example, the kind of the Facebook's back end ad platform, it changes on a week to week basis. So there's just always new ways of doing things, new targeting options, capabilities.
Is that because they've got the luxury of being fed the most data in the world? They just have coders constantly and people constantly looking at data and interpreting it and going, we need to do this, we need to do this.
Exactly. I mean, it's
insane,
the most ruthless business arms race in the world is one of them is between between Google and Facebook, or between Facebook trying to destroy Snapchat by stealing all of Snapchat's features and pointlessly reproducing them in Facebook Messenger and things like that.
Yeah.
And
why do you think that's pointless?
It's pointless because it's, what is the core purpose of Messenger? It's just,
hey bro, I'll be over there in 10 minutes.
And so, why they're putting like Facebook stories into Messenger and Facebook, and they're doing that to stop Snapchat's growth.
Right. You just made me realise something that I've intuitively done without thinking about it is I normally check anything new out, but that was a level of noise where I've just gone, nah, too much for me, don't need it, just need to do this, just need to do that.
So I think there's, beautiful technology should be, there's a case to be made sometimes, clean and elegant and intuitive, which is what Apple used to be, of course. Speaking of Apple, okay, so trends coming. VR, obviously, virtual reality.
Yeah.
AR, augmented reality.
Hello, Coachella in VR. Yeah.
And, the Apple iPhone 8 will come out late this year, and it's the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. So it's going to be, the idea is that it'll be a bit of a special iPhone, and they'll bring in some new improvements or capabilities.
Come on, that sounds like the press release for any phone.
Yeah. It's true. That's true, but slightly more so with this one.
So this might be the VR headset.
Well, it's a little bit too early days for that.
But have you been whisked away to Silicon Valley or anything like that? Have you gone that close to the source?
Not as such.
Yeah. So you keep abreast by internet research and so on, but you must. So, okay. What bothers me is I didn't even know about this till I watched that latest Adam Curtis doco. Is the algorithms feeding us just stuff that we want to know? Does that sort of bother you that we're kind of almost getting blinkered by social media content? I could almost see them rolling that back owing to public outrage. I don't know. We're sort of humans are very complacent about what social media does and doesn't do at the moment, right? We just sort of accept it. Even a lot of people who kind of shake their fists at other things. Yeah, it's a crazy phenomenon, dude.
Look, it really is, and I think it's just one of those things that there's so many advantages and upsides.
Yeah,
but like anything,
but then on a bad day, it'll terrify me.
There's so many downsides as well, and I couldn't agree more. So it's, I don't know if you read that latest article in the Spin-Off that was going around yesterday about the attention economy and how.
No, I'll write it down though. I had a day off.
It's worth a read.
Interwhistle yesterday.
There's so much competition for attention, and we all have, it's the the argument about, everyone used to be scared that the world was going to turn into George Orwell's 1984, but in fact it's the flip side. It's Huxley's Brave New World. The crux of that is, well, the idea is, rather than Big Brother watching us, which obviously it is, we are amusing ourselves to death. So we're surrounded in a sea of just constant information incoming streams that it becomes very easy just to be apathetic, because how do you care about a Trump crisis one day when there's another one the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day, and you can watch infinite amounts of entertainment on YouTube.
Dave Roper and I would often PM each other, and we're talking about that. Something came up, I think. It was the Mad Butcher being purportedly racist on Waiheke Island and so on, and everyone was so outraged. And Andy and I was something like give it probably 18 hours, maybe 36 hours, it'll be gone. All those outraged people will move on to something else. And I think that makes it very hard to form movements and so on, because it's just jump to jump to jump. But I think, summing all of that up, I think that humans, it's so new, we'll have a grasp of it all in 20 years, we might start 10 years, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I think we actually collectively don't know where this is going to all end up.
No, we don't, and it's like
because we're radically different in the way we function than we were even 10 years ago. That's how I feel.
I agree,
my life is different because of that.
But the changes that have happened in, say, the last 10, 20 years are probably nothing compared to the changes that are going to happen in the next 10 to 20. So, things like driverless cars, artificial intelligence, and actually, being able to change your body with all the kind of all these technology areas are converging, and when biotech, nanotech, AI, crazy times.
As long as we get those doors in Star Trek that go, I'll be happy. I think we'll leave it there, man.
All right, hey, thank you. Cheers, Lewis.
Fun.